Well, certainly we're living in very interesting times, and one of the themes I want to talk to you about today is this whole concept of this backlash against DEI policies and activity in this space. And it has definitely come out of the US in recent weeks with very clear changes of the spectrum in terms of the DEI approach, and organizations having to now very quickly adjust how they're operating in this respect. In the US, we have literally seen companies, corporations, some of the highest profile corporations overnight rip up their DEI policy. They've taken it off their websites. They've really removed it from the HR handbook. It's quite fascinating to see how quickly DEI has just been eliminated across the corporate landscape on the back of Trump, sort of mandates and the like. And this is causing a lot of angst in US boardrooms. And I have a number of clients in the US at the moment, and we're literally just talking through the issues. And, it's quite interesting. One organisation, which was a not-for-profit, which was reliant heavily on government funding, immediately changed their DEI policy to ensure that the taps didn't get turned off, that the funding was still coming into that organisation. The board took legal advice. The board took, advice from a number of different advisors, and it came to the conclusion that the only way forward for that organisation was to make some significant adjustments to its DEI policies, its language, how it was operating. And it wasn't so much about the policies per se, but it was a lot around the language and how it was appearing on their website and so on. So there was a board decision, and it was supported by the majority of the board members, that if we want to survive in this new paradigm, we're going to have to make these changes. There was a lot of backlash though, and an individual board member resigned over the whole incident. There were various employees that resigned. There were protests from different parties, different stakeholder groups, and it was very challenging to navigate, quite volatile in fact. And we're going to see, I think, some of this flowing through into the Australian market because we've got a lot of multinational corporations here. We're seeing changes already in DEI policies and language and so on. And it's a bit of a shame because I think what often happens in the world these days, it seems to be the pendulum just always seems to swing a little bit too far in each direction. And if we look at the history of DEI, we probably, should be honest, I think it probably swung a little bit too far. It became a little bit too extreme in terms of, some of the ways that DEI was being implemented into businesses and executed in reality. And now we have the other extreme, which is where we're kind of ripping the policies up altogether and pretending that never happened. And we're facing backlash from a very wide range of communities, and a lot of angst and a lot of concern, a lot of hurt, etc. The reality is people will always follow the money, so I can certainly understand why a lot of businesses are very quickly calibrating to the new paradigm. We've got sort of several years ahead of this in the US. And people are, who are reliant on government funding and the like, are making, very quick decisions. I think what we've got to be careful about, particularly here in Australia, is that we don't lose the spirit of what the whole DEI policies were about in the first place. And, what we were trying to achieve and how we were trying to be inclusive in our workplaces and how we were trying to ensure equity and fairness across our stakeholder groups, and where there were problems that we were addressing them appropriately. In my opinion, a lot of this came back to common sense, but the pendulum swung so far that we had to mandate things and we had to sort of make policies about everything. And, in the end, you sort of policied yourselves out with all the different aspects that had to be addressed. But I think we'll find some middle ground. And I think for board members, it's about finding middle ground. I think it's also about very, very careful communication. And when I look at my examples in the US where there's been this extreme backlash to the point that you have people resigning, protests, and so on, that is not a sign of a good communication policy that has, now adjusted. We've got to go in a change of direction. This is the correct decision that we're making, but we've now got to communicate this and bring people along on that journey. And I think because these decisions are being made so fast, there's just no way that the communication can follow suit and bring people along and bring people up to speed as to why we're doing things. So I think the middle road, the conservative road down the middle, and really clear communication is going to be really important. And the fundamentals always have to remain that we are inclusive in our workplaces and that we're treating people well. And the whole purpose of the DEI movement was to address some shortcomings. I think in some respects that's been addressed, but not always. And so you've just got to really be careful going forward that you're not alienating stakeholders and doing incredible damage if you're going to peel back some of these layers of these policies that have been put in place. But very interesting times, and certainly a time for board directors to be really across the brief and what's going on and being very, very aware of their culture in their organisations, what's working well, maybe what's not working so well, and how we can address this, and taking a really holistic view of things.